Tom asked me to read a different scripture than is in your bulletin. It's Colossians chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. And I wonder if it says sermon has anything to do with a car I recently bought. We'll soon find out. But I do consider it a gift from God. Okay. If ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth.
Thank you, Steve. I wasn't necessarily thinking of a car, but, we're going to talk about a lot of things this morning. As you look at this lesson text, I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm stealing a little bit from what Brett brought to us on New Year's evening in our Wednesday night lesson, and I stole that verse from you. I thought about it as we were talking about it, and knowing that this was coming up, I thought there's a really good spot to start. And we talk about this passage, really I've highlighted the second verse, and we talk about setting our affections on things above. And when you talk about setting your affections on something, it really has the meaning, and we need to think about it, that word affection is, where's our heart? Where's our focus? And as we sit here today to talk about 2025, we also have to then think about what happened in 2024. We have to think about where we are today. We have to think about where we're going. And that's what we do this for each year, is to kind of set that tone. And so it's where you set your affections. There is another passage of setting your affections, and it's found in Chronicles chapter 29. It's about King David. It says, "Furthermore, David the king said unto all the congregation, Solomon my son, whom alone God hath chosen, is yet young and tender, and the work is great, for the palace is not for man, but for the Lord God. Now I have prepared with all my might for the house of my God the gold for things to be made of gold, and the silver for things of silver, and the brass for things of brass, the iron for things of iron, and wood for things of wood, onyx stones and stones to be set, glistening stones in the diverse colors, and all manner of precious stones and marble, stones in abundance. Moreover, because I have set my affection to the house of my God, I have of my own proper good of gold and silver, which I have given to the house of my God, over and above all that I have prepared for the holy house, even 3,000 talents of the gold of Ophir, and 7,000 talents of refined silver to overlay the walls and the houses withal." King David here says that he had set his affections on the house of God. We know that David had a great zeal to build the temple for God. But God said, "David, you're not going to be able to build that temple. You have blood on your hands." And he said, "I'm going to turn it over to your son Solomon." But that didn't stop David. We see here the preparation that David made. He set his mind towards still preparing for building that temple. The passage tells us that David focused on the magnificence that he perceived that the temple of God deserved. This passage tells us that as he focused on it, he was concerned. He wanted to make sure it was so focused that when Solomon built it, there was none to compare. And if you read further in 1 Kings chapter 6, we see all the gold that was used to cover almost everything in the building, even the floors. We also can see that in 2 Chronicles chapters 3 and 4, all of the additional things that Solomon did to make the temple very ornate. And a lot of these things that we talked about right here in this passage that David talked about that he stored up, David was preparing. And then finally, in chapter 5, verse 1, we're told, And Solomon brought in all of the things that David his father had dedicated, and the silver and the gold and all the instruments put he among the treasures of the house of God. That is what we need to do today, right? That's what we're here for. He said he had taken all the things that Solomon built up, a treasure house, if you will. After they had built the temple, there were still many things that he said he put in the treasure house of God. David set his affection on the temple of God. And so today, our job is to set our affections on things above as well. Yes, sometimes that is financial, but I hope that as you come away from this, that you don't think that merely all we did was talk finance today, because that's not my goal. If I do that, I have failed you. So what should we do to set the tone for 2025? Well, I believe firmly that you have to look back at what happened in 2024, because if we don't learn from our past, we're bound to either have the mistakes or not learn from it. So when we look at 2024 and we look at the budget that we set last year, we had two big key items. We talked about our building upgrades. We had allotted $20,000 for that. And we talked about our mission work, the things that we wanted to do, and that was $30,000. Those two things alone are a huge chunk of what we do. We continued to upgrade the rooms with ceiling panels, lighting, paint, carpet. We did a lot of that work. We've now replaced almost all of that lighting and ceiling panels in the first floor, except for maybe a couple of the bathrooms. I think we have yet to do, and maybe an office here or there, but otherwise, the first floor, and this is everything except the fellowship hall, so keep that in mind as I'm talking. We also have already started up into the second floor that we're going to, we've already done the lighting up there, which was much more difficult than the first floor. The first floor, we were able to take out ceiling tiles and then replace them and put a light in them. Upstairs, we had to cut holes and really drop light in and do a lot of different things. The classroom up there has already been repainted. We're ready to go there as well. And so we also have the library to do, which in and of itself is going to be a huge task, just moving all the books around and other things that we need to do to paint the walls and redo the carpet. But those things are on task to do this year. We were also given the opportunity, I think we spoke about this last year at budget time, that we'd just been given the opportunity to buy a great deal of carpet at a really cheap price, and it's good commercial carpet. And we have to thank Kathy for that. Kathy for helping us do that, and then Kathy for all the work that she's done to help us get the carpet in. We've already replaced carpet in 4 different rooms. You can see that. And it's going to be a good commercial carpet. I know Kathy and I were talking about that. And it's like, we won't have to worry about it in our lifetimes. That stuff's going to last. It's going to be good. We've got some other stuff to replace as well. But that price has already been paid. And that will help us, excuse me, in 2025 in the fact that we will not have to endure that cost. So it's an area that we'll be able to make a change. By the way, I didn't tell you this sheet. There's 2 sides to it. You can look at 2024, and that's what we're going over now. And then when we get to the budget, you can flip it over, and it says 2025, and that'll give you the budget for next year. We also completed the work. Roger and Brother Phil did a wonderful job in getting all the HVAC system rebuilt, the 2 of those over on the fellowship hall side, and that accounts for some of our work that was done at the building as well. I can't talk about the building without talking about Steve Lamb. He's done a fantastic job of giving us direction, keeping us focused, keeping us motivated, finding the right people to do the right jobs. We come up here and have work days every one Saturday every month, and he always comes with a plan, and he's always got 2 or 3 because he's not sure who all is going to show up. But he does a wonderful job of kind of, as we said, keeping us on that focus, having the path of where we need to go, and keeping us prepared. He's the one who goes and gets all the things, and there's a lot of jobs, guys, around here that he takes on his own. And so my hat is off to Steve because he does a wonderful job in helping us do that and helping us keep these facilities updated. Matter of fact, this year we were we have looked and found a new insurer. And as they would come through and want to see the building, they made comments. They see a lot of churches. And they said this building had the upkeep on it more than anything else they had seen. That what's been done here to keep the facilities going. And in a building the size that we have, if we don't stay on top of that and it gets out of hand, we'll have some big expenses in front of us. So he's done a wonderful job. The other thing that we talk about is our mission work. Our mission work, obviously, as we in 2023, we took on helping Brother June Fuentes in the Philippines, as well as Heritage Bible College, and that is a long-term agreement that we have there. Also with Felix in Nigeria, that's about $2,000 a year. The work in Philippines is $1,000 a month. Those are commitments that we've made, and those are going to continue. We also met the need of HBC by when we were over there, we noticed that they had basically what a printer like I have sitting on my desk, and if you ask my wife, she will tell you it's a very slow printer. It'll get the job done, but it's pretty slow. But when you're trying to print off classroom material for 60 students, there were literally nights that June would stay up just babysitting the printer, trying to get that done. Thankful, and June, when we were there back in March, Anna was begging for a new printer, and June was like, "No, we don't need it yet." Well, it blew up. They needed it. And so we were able to help them. We were able to help them buy a brand new commercial grade printer to do all their black and white printing. And then we bought a smaller color one to kind of any of the color work that needed to be done, but much more fitting, much more appropriate for the work that needs to be done there, both for the school, for the students, but also for the administrative side. Members of Emporia here also individually started, matter of fact, we had an overabundance. We had several people that came up to us and said, hey, if you fall short, let me know. But we were able to supply 25 backpacks for the weekend preachers that go out each weekend. And they said, hey, we really need a bag that we can put our Bible and our computer and our clothing in. So I'm not carrying 3 bags because if you remember the jeepneys that I showed you? You know, they travel a lot of times in those to go down to the lowlands. And so it's much easier if they have just a backpack they can take with them. We were able to do that. We also provided some totes and some bags for those that go out and do the daily or during the week Bible class with younger children, that they can take that material with them. Matter of fact, some of the material that we took from here. We continue to search for a local work. That's something that the elders have had on their mind to do. We weren't afforded any new opportunities from locally. We really would like something that is close enough to us that we can go and help physically and financially both. I know Brett and I talked a little bit about that here the other night, about all the other things that can be done. It just seems like they're always too far away, but there's opportunity that we're continuing to look for there. Probably the biggest change that we made in missions this year, and it was a direct result of really where we were in 2023. We so desired to look further into how we could help the work there. And the work there, June really needed somebody to basically have oversight that he could talk to. When you go over there, I talked about it's a pretty young population. The other night we were speaking with him and he said, it's nice to have adult men that I can talk to and bring these other questions and comments. And so we were able, after we went and saw the work there, which was really a prerequisite from both sides, in July we took over the work of that from the eldership side of things, but also I think this congregation, and we try to bring that to you on a regular basis to let you know what's going on. And so starting in July, we started meeting with June every other week via Google Meet. And it sets for an hour unless we think we have to go longer than that, we can expand it. It's just amazing that you can meet with somebody halfway around the world and be talking to them just like they're literally right across the room from you. But it is a blessing for us to be able to talk to June and to see the zeal and what is going on over there, the works that they continue to do, how involved June is. We continue to I don't know if warn is a good word, but admonish him that he needs to make sure he's taking time for himself. I know Alan and I both and Leroy, where we get off the call and we talk amongst ourselves, and we don't know how he does it, because not only does he have the school, but he coordinates all this with the weekend preachers. He has these different meetings. You can look at some of these things that they've done in this past year. He's just sometimes a one-man band, and that's not always a good thing. We've also tried to keep you abreast of these things by doing it from the pulpit, but also putting stuff up on the new screen that we put in the back. We call it the mission screen. I don't know that that's the right word for it. But also even in writing, we've got an update that was printed in December for that as well. So we're hoping that we're keeping you involved in that so that you understand there are opportunities here as we continue to go forward, and I'm sure there'll be opportunities in 2025. The biggest thing is, as we talked about, that there was a brand new church started by what is this year the second-year students. That is a class project that June assigns them as to where do they start a church. They actually started in the spring of their first year, and they narrowed it down to an area in the La Union region, which is not far from them. And they basically then, as the first semester started, they went all over and they narrowed it down to 2, and ultimately got down to Balawan. And then for the first, I think it was 3 weeks of August, or the last 3 weeks of August, first week of September, they went out, and every week they were meeting people and inviting them to worship, and they basically covered this whole farming community that was there. And they also had to locate a building. This was all on them. This wasn't June doing this. This is the students doing that. A building that they could rent. And they had their first worship service September 15th. And they have since baptized as many as 5 that I'm aware of, and I may not have been kept up on all of them, but I know they've baptized 5 already. They continue to work with the church in Luna, which was also a plant by HBC in 2018. They also, because of that, they said, look, here's a region that we've vested in fairly well. How do we continue to build up the leadership of the other congregation so they can all continue to work together and maybe take some of the load off of the weekend preachers that they can go to other areas? They held a leadership forum late in the fall. There's 14 to 15 congregations in that region, and half of those are house churches. And so you can imagine how that leadership probably is wanting to some degree. And so they're trying multiple approaches to evangelize the same area to make sure that they're doing what needs to be done. They also have monthly IAs, they call them, that are for adult and youth leadership programs that they do in different areas every month. June has some graduates that help kind of coordinate that, but then June is involved with that typically on a Saturday. They have, you wouldn't think about this, but it's right, and when you really think about it, you go, oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense, that as they send out these weekend preachers, 10 to 12 different locations each weekend, and they're out knocking doors, they're out meeting people, having Bible studies, guess what? They get asked questions. And they're a lot of young individuals, and sometimes they don't have the answer. And so they would come back to June, and they would be talking about that, and June said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a weekly, he called it the preacher huddle. I haven't had a picture about it in the back. They have turned that basically into an open forum. They do it about 3 nights a week. And as I told you from the very get-go last March, when they start their day, they don't end it till late. But they now have a weekly, like I say, 3 days a week, they have a forum where they sit down and they bring these questions to not only the other preachers, but also with June there, but the whole school attends. So where they discuss these questions that they've been asked, because they have false teachers. They have problems with women in worship. They have problems with the divinity of Christ, weirdly enough. They have a lot of different things that they meet each day, they encounter. And being able to, just to say, if Jed and I had gone out and Jed was met with a question and we come to this open forum, I may not have had that question yet, but what can you probably count on? I'm probably going to have that question asked of me at some point. And so they do a really good job of bringing that about. And then the whole class, both classes come together and do that. June makes them take notes, by the way. He told me that the other day. He said, I make sure they are all taking notes because they're all then better prepared. As I said, much of things that June does as well. They have a lot of challenges over there, but I can honestly tell you that the work that they're doing is a great blessing to the cause of Christ in the Philippines, not just there in that region, but really all across. They have people from Mindanao, which is almost the furthest south island, and also from Bicol and Davao, if I'm saying that correctly, that have contacted them wanting them to start a school really on the southern part of the Philippines as well. So as we talk about those, keep those things in mind. It's not just the school itself, but all the work that's being done. So as we think about that, and those are the 2 big items, but as we look at the rest of the budget, our budget was unchanged from 2023. We left it really kind of where it was. We didn't change anything. We knew that it was going to be a challenge. We knew that it was going to be a very strong goal. We had a budget of over $4,800 for the year per week. We didn't reach that goal. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. Is it a good thing? Not necessarily, right? It's just a fact. It's just where we are. We ended up with a weekly contribution of right around $4,200, a little over $4,200 a week. And realizing that shortfall through the year, we talked about it quite a bit. We were able to kind of change some of our budget items and make sure that we weren't really overspending way more than we were, because we ultimately were a little over, I think, $30,000 for the year under contribution. But we also then were under on our spending as well. So we were able to kind of balance that out. For net for the year, we were only $6,600 more spent than we had come in on contribution. So we managed that. And like I said, those are all on the what I would call budgeted items, because we did have a budget item or a non-budgeted item that caught us off guard this year. But as you can see, there are several up there. I really count, if a budget item is within a few $100s, I consider that a success, and those that are under budgeted as well. Many of these we could talk about a lot. Benevolence is one that we put a number on it, but we don't know how that's going to end up every year. Roger does a wonderful job working with all of the needs that are out there. And if it takes more than that, we're going to meet more than that. That's not a deal where we said, oh, we've spent our budget and we stop, because we realize that's a work of the church. So here again, this year we underspent on that one. And there's multiple reasons for that. Some is that needs get met by individuals and not necessarily out of the church budget. Building and grounds, despite all the work that we did, we still were under budget there. Evangelism is a catch-all that includes Ladies' Day, it includes some tracts, it includes several different items. It's like the catch-all for evangelism, but we have a lot of the others that are broken out. It's missions, and then I forget all the others, but we'll get to those in a second. Utilities is one that we were surprised this year. We actually, the last couple of years, have been trying to budget a little bit stronger, knowing that we had incurred some larger expenses, and we were actually $3,100 under on that. We were also $3,600 under our budget on youth. That's largely because of the work of Bubba's, right? Bubba's covers a lot of that. And so we still budget for what we think we'll spend, but then the budget gets affected by what we do in Bubba's. Insurance, that one's $5,000. That looks a little off, like, wow, were you that far off? You didn't know what you had. No, it's a timing issue. As I said, we were looking for a new insurer this year, and typically what we do is in December of this year, we're paying for the first quarter of 2025. Well, we didn't do that this year because we had, I think it was 3 different companies that we were working with, and they really took us down to the wire. We literally, like the last week of the year, were settling what we were going to do with whom. And so those funds will actually be paid in the year that they're meant here in 2025. So that $5,000 is would catch you a little bit off guard if you weren't thinking about it. And then lastly, missions, as we said, we knew that we were under budget. We didn't find necessarily the things that we wanted to, so we kept that money in our pocket as well. We were over budget on really only a couple of things. One of those was classroom material, if you will, of teaching, of education. That includes classroom material, it includes VBS, many things that fall into that, and the ladies' Bible class, they have some books. We want to make sure that that's well funded. If we're going to overextend on a budget item, this is one that we want to make sure we're doing, because that's teaching. That's exactly what it is. And then transportation, we all know that we were challenged here over the last over a year with one of the older vans, and as we said in a meeting, we decided that probably the older van was worth more to us than it was to others, and it was better to repair it. We basically have replaced the whole front end under that thing, so we didn't want anybody out in it that we wouldn't want to put ourselves in. So we've done that. Hopefully we've crossed that threshold now, and we won't have all that. So we're going to keep that down as well. The one item where we were off budget, one that caught us unaware, was an unexpected expense that hit us late in the year. We realized that we had some shingles that we had lost. We also realized that we had some undulation, especially on some of the smaller peaks. This building has this one main peak here, but there are 2 smaller peaks over the classrooms. And so there's a couple of valleys over there. As many of you know, we've also had several times that we've had leaks that go into the fellowship hall right along that wall where the 2 join. And we've tried to remedy that 4 different times that I remember over the last couple of years, and never really found a good solution. But we said, look, we have a claim. We've had shingles that were lost. We've had some wind and hail that have been taken off. And we filed the claim, and very promptly the insurer denied our claim. And we're like, oh, okay. And they said, well, your insurance states $5,000 deductible except for wind and hail. And they said, your wind and hail is 5% of the value of the building. And they proceeded to tell us that the value of the building was $4.8 million. To which I told the other elders we need to sell today. Okay? I know that's jest. I'm not in favor of moving. I'm not in that. But it was like, if this building's really worth that, we need to sell it and rent it from somebody is what we need to do. So that would have been almost $250,000 deductible. Well, it doesn't cost that much to replace the roof. The most expensive roof we could have had was $138,000, and that was metal. We didn't go with that. But we knew that we needed to do it no matter what. We wanted to get it done before the winter, and so we went ahead and did it on our own. We had, I think, 3 different bids on the building. We actually sat down with them and talked with them. We had one that we truly kind of felt most at ease with, felt like they were the most trustworthy. Fortunate for us, they were actually the lowest priced one, at just under $50,000 to replace this peak here and the 2 to the north. And that included phase 4 shingles, which are the hardest shingles you can get for wind and especially for hail. It also included basically removal of 1 layer and replacement of 1 layer. Any other things above that was an added cost. Well, Anytime you start a job like that, you're going to get added costs. Found that in some of those valleys, there were up to 5 or 6 extra layers that had to be removed, which was a surprise to us given the jobs that are supposed to have been done in years past. That added about $7,800 to it. And then on the 2 peaks to the south, to the north, they said, look, the decking, which if you look above you right now, just on the other side of that is the shingles. This decking is 1 inch and about 5/8 thick. Well, it's the same type of decking on the other buildings. It's tongue and groove. It's very good. It's very sturdy. Over there, it has started to have some problems. I don't think we're going to have them here, but just because of the way they did it, and I think they probably used maybe a little bit more inferior. There was actually some spots where you could see, from the inside, you could see the bottom of a shingle with a nail sticking through. And they said, look, when we tear this off by city code, we can't replace, just go right back over it. We have to resheet it. We have to redeck it. That cost an additional $11,000 on those 2 peaks, okay? Just to kind of give you a sense. So all told, it was a little over $68,000 to have these 2 roofs replaced, or 3, really, when you get down to it. Fortunately, we were doing our due diligence at the time, searching through old records, and Leroy found an email from back in December 23 regarding our insurance deductibles, and they assured us that our building deductible for wind and hail was $5,000, not $250,000. We quickly refiled. We've already signed the paperwork to get back a little over $47,000, almost $48,000 of what we spent. So we're well relieved of that. We have also filed for that $11,000 for additional sheeting because that was required by city code, and under their rules, they should cover that. I have my doubts. I'll just be honest with you. I have my doubts. It's an insurance company, and they're going to do everything they can to walk away from that. Matter of fact, the reason we're getting paid is because they carry insurance for errors and omissions, and this was an error and omission, so their insurance company is actually paying us. But we're much better off than we were. Yeah, everybody's shaking their head going, yeah, insurance, right? One more note is they have promptly told us they would not cover us this year. And we had another insurance company that we were literally going to sign with. They asked for our claims history, and we said, yes, we made a claim. And they said, well, if you've made a claim within the last 3 years, we won't cover you. Just immediately pulled the offer right out from under us. So we ended up having to go with our second choice. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So like I say, some things that hit us this year. Luckily, we're back solid on our feet. We had put some money aside. We had money that was additional in our checking account as well as some money in savings. So we were able to foot that bill, but now we'll get that cash back and get much more close to whole for the year. So that finishes 2024. A lot involved, a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to be concerned about, but feeling much better where we are. As I said, the facilities here, especially with the roof, feel a lot better about where we are. Shouldn't have any leaks, should have a good roof there. We'll have to see how this insurance works out for the next one. So, as we start and talk about 2025, that's what we're here to do. That typically ends up being less time in the budget because I don't have all the history to talk about. So it's just kind of goals and forecasts. A budget is always about finances. It just is. But that includes a whole lot more because you have to set the plans. You have to set the ideas of where you want to be because those are going to inform you what the budget needs to be to meet those goals. Now, if you're even half awake and listening to what I've told you, you've got to be thinking that there's going to be a pretty significant change to the budget this year, and you're correct. But I'm going to tell you that change is not going to materially affect any of the evangelistic efforts that we've been doing over the last several years. Take that for note. We are not changing any of the evangelistic efforts of this congregation in 2025. We're still going to meet those goals. We're still going to set them out there. Matter of fact, we haven't told anybody. I think you could ask any of the deacons, you could ask Brett. We have not told anybody you need to pull back because that's not where we are, okay? Just rest assured on there. As I said, we were only $6,600 overspent for the year versus what we brought in. So we already know that we can manage this budget to where it truly needs to be and still meet all the goals, just like we did this past year. Are we going to change something? Yes, they're probably going to be on the physical side of the building. So as we look at those things, we keep those things in mind. We're going to have 2 significant changes to the budget and then several smaller ones, both increasing and decreasing. The 2 big changes are going to be the very things we just talked about as well, building upkeep and missions, because they're the 2 biggest items that we have that affect the budget. As we look at the building upkeep, we've spent the past several years, more than 2. I wrote down 2 in my notes, but I know it's more than 2, of doing a lot of work in this building to keep things not only up, but to get them updated, to get the lighting updated, carpeting, those such of things. We are already on our path to getting that done, and quite frankly, a lot of those expenses have already been taken care of. All the changes to the ceiling, all the changes to the lighting, that's all done except for a small portion. So we're not going to have that expense. We've also bought carpet already. That got accounted for in 2024. We don't have that expense in 2025. So the carpet that we have is still stored up. We've got carpet still to replace every other classroom, the library, the offices, anything that we need to replace in those areas over there, we've got that we need to, okay? That's already here. So we're looking at our budget saying we don't have to put a $20,000 bill on our budget this year. Are we going to pare back some things? Certainly. Right? But we're still going to have about $6,000. We're budgeting $6,000 for just different expenses, right? That keeping a building this size up to par, some things come along, whether it's a valve, right, Alan, that has to be replaced, or different toilets, or something that has to be happening. Even faucets for sinks that sometimes need to be replaced. We've done some of that this past year as well. But when you take $14,000 down there, that in and of itself is $270 per week off the budget. There's the first one. Then you walk over and talk about missions. As we said, we have 2 missions that are going on. We're committed on those. So that's already, $14,000 for the year that's committed. We don't have an option on that. We have to meet that unless we want to pull back, and we don't want to pull back, okay? But we are also going to keep $4,000 in there, so we're going to have an $18,000 budget this year for missions that allows us, if we do find one of those additional opportunities, we can still meet that. But if you pull that $12,000 off of that budget, that's another $230 per week. That's $500 a week off of a $4,800 budget. That's 85% of our budget reduction for the year, okay? That's why I'm trying to tell you, we're not going to change what we're doing. We're changing some things that we know we can change. We might have to change our goal on missions a little bit, but we're still there. And I have a feeling that if we have something that pops up that's a really good one, we can come before this congregation and we'll get there. But that's where we are on the buildings. That's where we are on missions. When we look at the rest of the physical properties, not a lot of changes. Some of those we've already talked about. Building and grounds down $14,000. Here again, I bust the budget up when I'm putting it together. Physical properties versus evangelism. And I want those two to continue to grow apart. I want to continue to see physical properties fall down as a percentage. I want to see our evangelism increase as a part of our budget. We're trying to get there. Miscellaneous, a small change. I think we're getting better and better with our budgeting system and with where we're allocating things, so we think we can pull that down some. Here again, these small ones don't make a huge difference. $1,000 on office supplies. Most of you know, here in January, first time that we've emailed the Cornerstone, we think that by not printing the Cornerstone, or at least there's many of them, and also the postage, that we can be able to take that down about $1,000 for the year. Technology has still got $2,000, and as Matt has told me a couple of times, he goes, sometimes just a board goes out and we have to replace it. And that's kind of where we are. If we have to replace one, we will, but we don't have any big items there. Utilities, we talked about the fact that we were already $3,000 down last year, below what we budgeted. So we pulled that down $1,000 to $20,000. I think that's correct. But that still allows us an 11% increase on what we spend in 2024. So even if our utility expenses increase 11%, we would still be within our budget tolerances of what we want to do. The only increase, as I said, will be insurance. I've already told you a little bit about that process. We had one that wouldn't. They were going to be a $5,000 deductible for everything. We thought we had that signed up with State Farm, then they yanked that out from under us. We had also recontacted Church Mutual, who was a little bit higher. Unfortunately, we were not able to get away from the wind and hail deductible as it sits. So this policy that we're under currently has a 2% deductible, not 5%, but 2% the cost of the building. And they also put the cost of the building at $2.4 million. Cut that in half, right? So that's about a $50,000 bill. So basically, if you look at it, that's what we spent on the base quote that we had for the roof, and that means that we're basically self-insuring for the roof unless it costs more than that, and we all know what costs have done over the past several years. But we're going to continue to work at that. We're going to continue to look at that, but we needed to get coverage, and that coverage is the building, it's the workman's comp, it's an umbrella policy, as well as the vehicles. That's all inclusive of that $18,500 that you're going to have in there. So our physical properties are going to count for about 46.5% of our overall budget. and that's a better percentage than it was last year, so I'm happy for that. When we look at evangelism, as I said, we've already covered a lot of this. There's no big changes to some of these items. We're going to continue to look at those. Oh, I forgot one. In physical properties, we're still going to set back about $5,000 for the possibility of an air conditioner needing to be replaced. I can tell you that over the Thanksgiving holiday, my mother-in-law's HVAC needed to be replaced, and a guy came and they gave us quotes anywhere from $10,000 to $22,000 for her house, not this building. And we have, Roger, correct me, 9 different units? I think that's correct. He's like, I don't remember. Too high for him to count. Might have to take off his shoes or something. But seriously, we have a lot of cost there. So they have warned us for a couple of times to make sure that we're allowing that we might end up having something like that. But that would be a lesser expense. But I wanted to remind you of that on the building. Back to evangelism. As I said, education, we're going to take that side of the budget up $1,500. That's basically going to cover what we spent in 2024. Missions, we're going to take that down, but we're not going to be remiss in what we're doing in our missions. We're already have our allotment of the 2 that we're working with, and we're still looking. We would still love to find a congregation within a drive from here that we could work with and help. Much like, if you think about it, much like what they're doing in the Philippines. They're saying, look, we're going to this region and we're building a congregation. There's other 14 congregations that might need our help that we can help as well. And maybe as we build them all up, then we're all stronger. And that's kind of our goal here, is what we would like to do. So if you see some of those opportunities nearby, please bring them to us, because we would love to dig into those and see if we can find a way. I know that Brett has done a wonderful job, even with the youth, of going to some different places and supporting them for VBS, also supporting them for a Sunday service and things like that. That stuff is immeasurable on so many different ways that you don't want me to talk about it, because we'd be here even longer than I'm going to be. So I'm not going to cover that, but Brett's been doing a wonderful job with that. As I said, youth, we're going to take about $1,000 off of that budget. It's not a big change. And look, there, it says no change in the program. Don't think that we're short-sheeting the youth program. We think we have a wonderful youth program, what they're doing and what their efforts have been. We do not want to thwart that. And I would even say if they end up needing that, we'll either cover it with the budget or somebody's going to cover it individually to make sure that we have the funds needed. Like I said, Bubba's proceeds go to a big part of that. We're going to take the budget item for staff down. No, we're not cutting salaries. I was actually waiting for somebody to kind of look at it. What are you talking about? Because we're not cutting salaries. But if you remember last year, we had an intern. We're not having an intern this year. And so the money that we're saving on that, we gave the staff, it's already in place, a 3% increase this year. The men made it plain in a meeting, I think, year before last, saying, make sure you're taking care of the staff. And we are 100% in agreement with that. So we did that, but because we're not going to have an intern this year, then we're actually able to take that down about $2,200. So don't barbecue us that we're cutting staff salary, because we're not at all. It's important that we keep our staff working at the levels they have. They've done a wonderful job this past year. I know we've told them as we talk to them about this that we love what they're doing. We would love to be able to do more in a lot of areas, but very thankful for the ones that we have working with us, both Brett and Jed and Tanya and Jana. Thank you for the work that you do. That comes from the elders, but I'd also believe it comes from the congregation. We much appreciate what you guys have been doing for this congregation and on behalf of this congregation. You know, Brett led a meeting for Midwest Youth yesterday. It doesn't have to do necessarily just with our group. It's a bigger group. Jed does the singing, the monthly singing. He works with that with individuals. So there's a lot of things that we do outside of here. There are some congregations that look at us to be the leader, and we need to continue to be doing that. So the last one they have in evangelism is benevolence. As I said, it's not an area that you can correctly budget in a year. It's just not. I think this congregation does a great job with benevolence on multiple fronts. It's more, in my mind, than just the use of money. Is a financial issue sometimes the key? Yes. But any time that we meet somebody with a financial need, I would almost undoubtedly tell you they have a spiritual need as well, and we would love to meet that at every opportunity that we can. And I think, as I said, I'm going to say it again, Roger does a wonderful job of being able to work with those individuals and truly understand the needs that they have. But if you think about this congregation, there are multiple ways that we work in benevolence. The Heart and Hands Group, what they do on a regular basis. I think, is it 9 or 10 now quilts that they've made and handed out? That's benevolent because they're taking them to people. They think a lot about who that is going to go to and who they're going to hand that out to. It's just important. You've seen some of the pictures up here of past, I don't say past members, that's not fair. Members that can't attend here anymore. Some ladies that are in some nursing facilities. They've taken quilts to them. And, you know, the smile that you see on their face, to me, is well worth all of the work that goes into. The clothes closet that we have. We've had people that get use of that from time to time as well. Our youth group service projects, that's a form of benevolence. They continue to do that on multiple different occasions in different ways every month. And then individual efforts by people that you never see. You never see, the dollars never hit the books, the need never is known except by a few individuals, and people take care of other people. And I believe that, to me, is the heart of the matter of benevolence that God has for us when he said that you have to be benevolent, is that we need to see to the needs of individuals. And I think that speaks to our heart. Where's our heart? If we're just handing out funds to somebody or just giving them a bottle of water, that's not what God meant when he said have benevolence one to another. That's having the heart of wanting to seek the best of other individuals, seeking their best on multiple levels, and doing everything we can to get there. And I think this congregation has that heart. I think that we do a wonderful job of meeting that demand on a very regular basis, and I am very appreciative of each and every individual that steps up. As I said, even with the book packs, in a lot of ways, that's benevolence because there was a need. And I had people that came up and just met that need, and I had others come up and say, hey, if you fall short, let me know. I'll cover the rest. That's a heart. That's a heart that's looking at what can we do. Does that mean that I have to overspend on things? Certainly not. But we are going to see to people's needs, and I think that's really where we want to be. So all of that given up, then gives us our budget for the year on the evangelism side of 53.5%. Here again, a bigger percentage than we were last year. I think about 1.5% more. So I'm appreciative of where we are with that. So that gives us our annual budget of just over $4,300 each week. As I said, we were about $4,200 last year that we actually gave. So this is still a goal. I do believe it's attainable. I believe that each one of us will search our hearts and find a way to make that happen on a lot of different levels. Because as I said, this is number. And I am a numbers guy, I'll be honest with you. Numbers mean a lot to me. Matter of fact, my boss is a lot of time, I'll send him a message and he'll go, Tom, numbers, not words. That's the environment I live in every day. But when I'm here, I think about all of the things that we do on multiple levels. So this budget is more than just that dollar figure, but we do have to set our heart on that. We do have to say we have commitments that are made. We've made commitment to staff. We've made we've made a commitment to the mission work that we do. Those all have to be met. We've met that. I hate to say it this way, but the elders have signed you up for that. We've signed that, and you help us cash that check every week. And so we appreciate how that happens and where that is. Lastly, I want to leave you with a passage. It's a passage that I think is very important, and I want you to accept this passage to you from the elders. And it's in Philippians chapter 1, verses 7 through 11. If you've read the New Testament, you'll find that just about every letter Paul writes, he has kind of that standard greeting at the beginning of it. This is the second part of that greeting to the members at Philippi. And I want you to take this as coming from the elders. Even as is meet for me to think this of you all, because I have you in my heart, inasmuch as both in bonds and in the defense of confirmation of the gospel, ye all are partakers of my grace. For God is my record, how greatly I long after you all in the bowels of Jesus Christ. And then catch this rest. And this I pray, that your love may abound yet more and more in knowledge and in all judgment, that ye may approve things that are excellent, that ye may be sincere and without offense till the day of Christ, being filled with the fruits of righteousness, which are by Jesus Christ unto the glory and praise of God. I know us as elders, as we meet regularly and talk a whole lot more regularly, this was our prayer for each member of this congregation. It is our prayer for this congregation that we work together, that we do have those things, that we are blessed in such a way. This morning, I know there are individuals here that need to put on their Lord in baptism. Today's not a better day. There's not a better day than today. There may be those here who have not yet put on the Lord in baptism. There may be others here who have not walked according to the will of God, and you find yourself walking down the wrong pathway. You need to turn from that. None of those can be answered better than today. Today is the best day for that. So if you have a need, we would ask you to come now as we stand and sing the song of invitation.